ज्ञानतिमिरान्ध ज्ञानञ्जनाशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मायं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरुं श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगना रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवम् साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनासाहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगना ललिता श्रीविशाखावितंश्च। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धु जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कान्ता राधा कान्ता नमोस्तुते। तप्त काञ्चन गौरांगी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानु सुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानन्द श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृन्द। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you for joining in and making yourself available. Prabhuji, you never turn us down whenever we want somebody to help us. You are there to mentor us. So I really appreciate your quality. And we really enjoy the session that you do. You know, it is recorded and a lot of devotees see after the session. So, Prabhuji, we are reading the Srimad Bhagavatam. We are on Canto 1, Chapter 19. Chapter 19 is the appearance of Sukadeva Goswami. And the text for today, Prabhuji, is text 14. So I hand over to you, Prabhuji. Kindly instruct us if you wanted us to do anything.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Mataji, as always, for giving me the opportunity to give this class for my own purification, and maybe we can all learn something from Srimad Bhagavatam that we can, put into practice in our own lives. So, yeah, if I can, am I able to share my screen? Okay.
Yes, Prabhuji. I see we have a new devotee that has joined, Shriya Pal Mataji. Thank you very much for joining in. This group meets every day at the same time, same link. So we really appreciate your presence, and we can chant 3 Hari Bols for you. Everybody, if you can unmute and let us welcome Shriya Pal Mataji to this group.
Hari Bol.
Hari
Hari
Bol.
Bol.
Hari Bol.
Hari Bol.
Thank you very much, Mataji. If you can put your video on, so if we meet on the streets of Eldoret, we can see you, or in England, or if you can tell us where you are from.
So Mataji, so I invited some devotees from some Bhakti Rickshaw groups that I'm involved with. So Shriya Mataji is part of Bhakti Rickshaw.
Okay, thank you. So if we can see her on the streets of London, we'll at least know who she is then. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Okay, so I'll share my screen then. Okay, one second. Okay, so hopefully you can all see that. And as Mataji said, today we'll be going through Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 19, text 14 to 15. And basically, the topic that I've kind of, the main topic that I've kind of taken out of these two verses is detachment through attachment. And I will explain as we get into it what that actually means. But of course, first of all, we'll go through the verse. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Tasyaiva meghasya paravaresho vyasakta chittasya griheshva bhikshnam nirvedamulo dvijashaparupo yatra prasakto bhayamashu datte. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, the controller of both the transcendental and mundane worlds, has graciously overtaken me in the form of a Brahmana's curse. Due to my being too much attached to family life, the Lord, in order to save me, has appeared before me in such a way that only out of fear I will detach myself from the world. So just before we get into the purport, so we can see here already how Maharaj Parikshit is reacting to the curse that has been placed upon him, and he's understanding that this is actually the Lord's arrangement. The Lord has arranged for this curse to be placed upon him. And Maharaj Parikshit, being very humble, he feels that he's so much attached to family life that if the Lord hadn't done this, hadn't arranged this whole plan, then he wouldn't have been able to detach himself. So he's actually feeling very grateful. He's feeling very grateful to the Lord that he has made this arrangement for him to, leave his family life. Leave his family life after he's already fulfilled all his duties in family life, in household life. He's already dealt with everything and made sure that the kingdom will continue very nicely. And now, he has obviously left that life behind. So he's saying that it's very gracious. He's saying that this has graciously overtaken him. And we can see in the way that he's responding to it also, he is acting in a very gracious way as well. But anyway, we'll get more into that as we go through the purport. So as usual, I've divided the purport up a little bit. So would anyone who has joined us so far, would anyone like to read this slide, please?
Prabhuji, I think everybody's shy today. Let me help them. I can.
Sure, thank you, Mother.
Srimad Bhagavatam 1.19.14, purport 1 of 2. Maharaj Parikshit, although born in a family of great devotees, the Pandavas, and although securely trained in transcendental attachment for the association of the Lord, still found the allurement of mundane life so strong that he had to be detached by a plan of the Lord. Such direct action is taken by the Lord in the case of a special devotee. Maharaj Parikshit could understand this by the presence of the topmost transcendentalist in the universe. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. So as I said, we're going to be covering or discussing the topic of detachment through attachment. So here we're getting a hint of what that attachment means. So we need to have some kind of attachment in our lives. It's not that we cannot have, it's not that we can live without any kind of attachment. We need some kind of attachment. But what kind of attachment? Here, Srila Prabhupada is explaining very clearly, transcendental attachment for the association of the Lord. We can say attachment to the lotus feet of the Lord, attachment to serving the Lord. And again, we can see that obviously we know Maharaj Parikshit is a pure devotee. But here, because of his great humility, he's thinking, I'm so much allured by this mundane family life, and I have no means of escaping it. And therefore the Lord, directly got involved. So here Prabhupada is saying that this is when the devotee is a very special personality, then the Lord directly gets involved. So that means in most cases, generally, we can understand that he doesn't directly get involved, but maybe through some other means, through his instruments, through his other devotees, he makes those arrangements. But here, the Lord directly got involved. And the last sentence will be covered a bit more after this, but Maharaj Parikshit is understanding that this is some special circumstances, this is some special situation. It's not something ordinary, because he's there at the bank of the river, and then all of a sudden all these, Srila Prabhupada says, topmost transcendentalists in the universe, all these great personalities are coming there from all over the place. So obviously seeing that they're all assembled in the same place, then it's quite obvious that something special is happening here. Okay, so just on this point of attachment to the lotus feet of the Lord, there's a very nice verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila, chapter 7, text 143. Krishnera charane hoy yadi anurag, Krishna vinu anyatra tara nahi rahe rag. If one develops his love of Godhead and becomes attached to the lotus feet of Krishna, gradually he loses his attachment to everything else. So basically, we can see here that simply by becoming attached to the lotus feet of Krishna, then automatically we'll start to lose the attachment to material things. So I've kind of just summarized this in the next slide. That basically, once, the more we are attached to Krishna, then, the less we will be attached to these mundane things. So it's kind of like these scales, automatically happens that when one side goes down, the other side goes up. So when one side becomes full of that attachment to Krishna, then automatically the other side, which is becoming more and more empty, then it becomes lighter and goes up. So basically it's happening simultaneously. And so another point here is that if we were just trying to give up these mundane attachments, but not having anything to replace it with, not having any transcendental attachment to replace it with, then we may make some spiritual progress for some time, but ultimately, what is the result? The result is that we will fall back down, because we're missing something. Ultimately, we're missing that rasa, we're missing that ananda, that bliss that we only get from our relationship with Krishna, from our relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If we don't have that, then that ananda aspect of it is missing, and then ultimately we'll become dissatisfied and fall back down to materialistic life. So it's very important, and Srila Prabhupada mentions this so many times, that we're not just trying to make everything zero, but we want to, he always says, you have to think of the positive side as well. There has to be something positive to replace it. So we're not interested like the impersonalists or the Shunyavadis, in a specific kind of impersonalist who just want to reduce everything to nil, reduce everything to zero. That is not our process. So yeah, we need to have something to replace those attachments that we're giving up. And then, so now we understand we need to have attachment to Krishna. So how do we get this attachment? So I put this verse simply because, one way you can do is we pray for it. We want to be attached to Krishna, so we can pray to Krishna, to help us develop that attachment to his lotus feet. And so I just included this so we have an example of a prayer that we could even recite to Krishna in our own time as well. We can use, there's so many beautiful prayers in the scriptures that we can use as well. Even if we don't feel like we can compose our own prayers or say our own prayers, or we can't, or the words maybe don't come, or maybe we don't feel like we are able to express what is in our heart. But Srila Prabhupada says that we can just repeat, all these amazing prayers that we have from Srimad Bhagavatam, so many beautiful prayers from the scriptures. So anyway, this verse is coming within the Uddhava Gita, which is, which covers many chapters in the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam. So anyway, here in text 11, 29, 40, Uddhava is saying to Krishna, Namostute Mahayogin Prapannam Anushadimam Yata Tvak Charanam Bhoje Rati Syad Anapayini. Obeisance is unto you, O greatest of yogis. Please instruct me, who am surrendered unto you, how I may have undeviating attachment to your lotus feet. So we can also pray, to Krishna in the same way, that please show me the way with which I can, become more attached to your lotus feet, and in that way automatically become, less attached to all these mundane things. And then, okay, so this is another way to look at this point of becoming detached from material things and becoming attached to the Lord. So again, in the 11th canto, this is chapter 2, text 42. So it says that devotion, direct experience of the Supreme Lord, and detachment from other things, these three occur simultaneously for one who has taken shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in the same way that pleasure, nourishment, and relief from hunger come simultaneously and increasingly with each bite for a person engaged in eating. So it's quite a famous verse. I'm sure some of you have heard this before. But yeah, basically, just we all have this experience that when we're hungry, and then we start to eat, and obviously we know we're getting some pleasure, especially if we're tasting some wonderful prasadam. We're experiencing some pleasure, and obviously we're experiencing some nourishment, and then of course our hunger is gradually becoming relieved. So all these three things, this pleasure, nourishment, and relief from hunger, they come together. And the more we eat, we become more and more relief from that hunger. We get more and more pleasure, more and more nourishment. So similarly, just by taking shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or in other words, surrendering to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And what does that mean practically? Rendering service. If you're becoming attached to the lotus feet of the Lord, in practical terms, it means serving the Lord. It's not just a sentimental thing, but there's some action. Like Srila Prabhupada says that love is not just a sentiment, love is service. So that's the way in which we are showing Krishna that we have that love for him through our service. So anyway, basically, so we can summarize this verse that when we engage in devotional service, then gradually we get devotion or bhakti, we get direct experience of the Supreme Lord, and we become detached from material things. So these are results that we get. These three results we get automatically just by performing devotional service. So it's a very amazing process that we've been given by Srila Prabhupada, by Krishna. So then the purport to that same verse. So Srila Prabhupada says, the word viraktihi is very significant in this verse. Virakti means detachment, whereas tyaga means renunciation. According to Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the word renunciation can be used in a situation in which one considers giving up an enjoyable object. But by considering everything to be potential paraphernalia in the service of Lord Krishna, one need not give thought to renunciation, for one uses everything in the proper way in the service of the Lord. Yukta vairagyam uchyate. So here Prabhupada is explaining that there's a distinction between detachment and renunciation. So, and he's saying that we can only, according to his spiritual master, that we can only say it's renunciation if we're actually giving up something which we consider to be a source of enjoyment for ourselves. Because if it's something that we don't get any pleasure from, then what are we giving up? Like, it's no trouble to, say, for example, some food that you don't like at all, and then you say, oh, I'm so renounced, I'm giving this up. But if you have no interest or taste for that food anyway, then you're not really doing much. Whereas if it's something that you're actually getting a lot of pleasure from, you're actually enjoying it a lot, and then you give that up, then that can actually be considered renunciation. But then we're going to a slightly different point, that we're not trying to renounce everything. Renounce in the sense that we just put it aside and don't even use it, don't do anything with it. Instead, we're becoming detached from it. Or you could say that becoming detached from the desire to enjoy the results. We're becoming detached from that. And instead, we're just seeing how those things can be used in the service of Lord Krishna. So that is Yukta Vairagya. I'm sure all of us or many of us have heard of this term before, Yukta Vairagya. It's also explained very nicely by Rupa Goswami in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. But this is real renunciation, according to Rupa Goswami. Just giving everything up and not using it when we could use it in the service of Krishna, that is false renunciation. But real renunciation is to renounce our desire to enjoy the results, give the results to Krishna, but use that thing, in Krishna's service. That is actual vairagya. Okay, now the second half of the purport. Would anyone like to read this, please?
Prahlad Prabhu, are you able to read this? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, so I just read what's on the screen, right?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay. The Lord resides with his devotees, and therefore the presence of the great saints indicated the presence of the Lord. The king therefore welcomed the presence of the great rishis as a mark of favor of the Supreme Lord. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you, Prabhu. So this is basically to continue from what we heard earlier, that how Maharaj Parikshit could understand, that all these topmost transcendentalists in the universe were appearing there, And then Srila Prabhupada is saying that the Lord is always, with his devotees. So the fact that all these great saints, these great devotees are coming there, that means the Lord is also present there. So, if the Lord himself is present there, then obviously he is showing some favor to Maharaj Parikshit. And the king, having the proper vision, he can understand that. He can understand that behind the presence of all these great devotees is the presence of Krishna. And this point, that the Lord is always with his devotees, always resides with his devotees, is very beautiful. It really shows the loving relationship that Krishna has with his devotees, that he can't be separated, even for a moment from his devotees, because, they're showering him with so much selfless love that how can he possibly, give up the association of his devotees? And that's why we hear that, Krishna cannot take even one step out of Vrindavan, because the Vrajavasis, the residents of Vrindavan, they have bound him so tightly in their hearts by their love that he can't even think, of leaving Vrindavan. So I just need to plug my laptop in, just 1 second. Yeah, so sorry. So Anvin, I'm sure we've all heard that beautiful verse of Krishna when he's speaking to the gopis, and he's saying that, you have performed such wonderful devotional service to me that I cannot even repay you for your service. So you must be satisfied with your devotional service. So, and this point has been explained by devotees, that why is it? Because Krishna is God. How is it that he can't repay them? Surely he can. Surely he can do anything. Why is it that he can't repay them? Or he feels like he cannot repay them sufficiently. Why is that? Because Krishna, Krishna is unlimited, and he has unlimited relationships, with unlimited devotees. So in one sense, Krishna is dividing his attention, dividing his love, dividing his heart between countless living entities, between countless devotees, whereas the devotee is giving themselves entirely to Krishna. They're giving their whole heart, their whole life, everything, surrendering everything to Krishna. So Krishna is looking at it like he's comparing it, that they are giving me everything, but I cannot give them everything, because I have to give to so many people. So I cannot give everything to them. So therefore I feel I am not, he feels bad that, they're giving me everything, but I can't repay them sufficiently. So yeah, how can anyone leave devotees who are showering such love on him? Okay. And just on this point, again, another verse which I'm sure most of you have heard before. So Srila Prabhupada quotes this in a few places, but here this is from the purport to Srimad Bhagavatam 4:21-41, where Srila Prabhupada says, the Supreme Personality of Godhead says, Naham tishtami vaikunte yoginam hridaye shuva tatra tishtami narada yatra gayanti mad bhaktaha. I am not in Vaikuntha, nor in the hearts of the yogis. I remain where my devotees engage in glorifying my activities. And this is from the Padma Purana. It is to be understood that the Supreme Personality of Godhead does not leave the company of his devotees. So again, it's interesting here that how can that be that the Lord is not in Vaikuntha? You know, I thought the Lord is always in the spiritual world. The Lord is always in Vaikuntha, but here he's saying he's not in Vaikuntha. And then we hear, you know, the Lord is the Paramatma, he's in the hearts of the yogis and like that. The yogis are meditating on Krishna in the heart. But here again, Krishna is saying, I'm not even in the hearts of the yogis. So how can that be? And then he's saying, actually, I'm only where my devotees are engaged in glorifying me and my activities, you know, my qualities, my form, my name, all of these things. So how can that be? But then we understand, okay, the point is that obviously in Vaikuntha, his devotees are engaged in glorifying him. So that's why he's in Vaikuntha. It's not he's in Vaikuntha because it's Vaikuntha. He's in Vaikuntha because his devotees are engaging in glorifying his activities. So that implies that if that wasn't happening in Vaikuntha, then there would be no reason for him to be in Vaikuntha. So it's not that he's just in Vaikuntha just to sit there on a throne and enjoy himself. No, he's there because his devotees are there. And again, similarly, we can say with the hearts of the yogis, because they're also his devotees, that's why he's there. But if they weren't his devotees, if they weren't engaging in glorifying his activities, or we can say kirtan, you know, kirtan means to glorify. So if they weren't doing that, then again, he wouldn't be there. So basically, what I'm trying to say is that the presence of the devotees there engaging in the service, that is the main point. That's the principal factor here. So yeah. Okay, so now we'll go on to now we'll go on to the second verse of today, verse 15. Tammo payatam pratiyantu vipra ganga devi drita chittamishe dvijopasrishta kuhakastakshakova dashatvalam gayata vishnugataha. Translation: O Brahmanas, just accept me as a completely surrendered soul, and let Mother Ganges, the representative of the Lord, also accept me in that way, for I have already taken the lotus feet of the Lord into my heart. Let the snake bird, or whatever magical thing the Brahmana created, bite me at once. I only desire that you all continue singing the deeds of Lord Vishnu. Okay, so some very nice points here that, he's saying that he's already taken the lotus feet of the Lord into his heart. He's already surrendered unto the Lord. So he's not worried, let it come, let it bite me, let my life end, let me leave this body. That's fine. But then his last sentence is very nice, that so as we know now, that he's not even thinking about his destination or what happens to him. But still, even though he's not going to be there, he's leaving, but he wants all those other devotees assembled there. He just wants them, to continue singing the deeds of the Lord, continue glorifying the Lord, continue serving the Lord. So we can see this kind of nice, selfless mood of Maharaj Parikshit here. Okay, would anyone else like to read the first half of the purport, please?
Any volunteers?
I can read it, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Shubhamata.
As soon as one is given up completely unto the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, he is not at all afraid of death. The atmosphere created by the presence of great devotees of the Lord on the bank of the Ganges and Maharaj Parikshit's complete acceptance of the Lord's lotus feet were sufficient guarantee to the king for going back to Godhead. He thus became absolutely free from all fear of Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. Yeah, so I'm hoping everyone is just because everyone is shy and they don't want to read, and it's not that they're sleeping and that's why they have the camera off. But yeah, anyway, so we can see here, following on from the verse itself, Srila Prabhupada is explaining that, you know, he's not at all afraid of death. And there's these two, you can say these two factors, which Srila Prabhupada is explaining. Because of these two things, is guaranteed that Maharaj Parikshit is going back to Godhead. So these two things are the presence of great devotees of the Lord. So otherwise, we can, in other words, we can explain this as the association of pure devotees. So, you know, that pure sadhu sangha. And the second thing is, it says here, complete acceptance of the Lord's lotus feet. So basically that means surrender. So we can say sadhu sangha and sharanagati, these two things that are mentioned here. If we have these two things, then we are guaranteed to go back to Godhead. But as I said earlier, what does surrender to the lotus feet actually means? Serving the lotus feet. It's an action. It's devotional service. So if we're doing that, and we never let go of the association of devotees, then we can go back to Godhead. And because Maharaj Parikshit can understand that, he is free from all fear of death. So again, going back to Uddhava, in the Uddhava Gita, he makes a similar point, that his, you know, this fear cannot have any power over him. So anyway, he says, Vidravito moha mahandakaro ya ashrito me tava sannidhanat vibhavaso kim nu samipagasya shitam tamobhi prabhavantya jadya. O unborn primeval Lord, although I had fallen into the great darkness of illusion, my ignorance has now been dispelled by your merciful association. Indeed, how can cold, darkness, and fear exert their power over one who has approached the brilliant sun? And we see this point many times, that Krishna, the Supreme Lord, is compared to the sun. And, you know, there's another famous verse in the CC talking about this, that, you know, wherever the sun is, there can be no darkness. And similarly, wherever Krishna is, Maya has no power there. So this point again is being described very nicely here by Uddhava. And then in the purport to that verse, Srila Prabhupada says, if one surrenders to Krishna, one is immediately liberated, and thus begins his career as a transcendental devotee with complete confidence in the Lord's protection. So basically, if we're surrendered to the Lord, and we therefore have no fear of death, and we're completely confident that the Lord will protect us, so what is there to fear? And then, okay, so now just going to that last sentence again of the translation, is pointing on continue singing the deeds of Lord Vishnu. So we can see this point that, you know, the Lord's devotees, ultimately, they're very eager, you know, as much as they can, they want to hear the Lord's glories and pastimes, and also want to chant those glories and pastimes. And not only that, but just like Maharaj Parikshit is doing in this verse, they encourage others to do the same, because they're getting so much out of it. They're getting so much bliss. They're getting so much happiness. And therefore, they're seeing others around them suffering, and they don't want that to happen. So therefore, they encourage, you know, please just, you know, hear about Krishna, you know, chant the names of Krishna, you know, wherever you go. Again, there's, you know, similar verses like this in the CC and in, you know, many bhajans that talk about this point. Just hear the names of Krishna, just chant the names of Krishna. So yeah, so they, you know, the devotees are getting so much, they're relishing hearing this. So I just added this very nice verse, which is actually spoken by Hanuman. So this is from Sanatana Goswami's Brihad Bhagavatamrita 1.4.99. So Hanuman says, astambananya bhavanam dasanam paramagatihi prabhor vichitra leelaiva prema bhakti vivardhini. Let the wonderfully varied pastimes of the Lord be the very life of his servants who think of nothing but him. For such devotees, those pastimes always increase the ecstasy of love of God. So we can see here this point that this is the life of the devotees. Hearing about the Lord, hearing about the Nama, Rupa, Guna, Lila, hearing about all these things, anything in relation to the Lord. That is the life of the devotees. This is what gives us life. And when we're hearing mundane things, it's just not the same. We don't feel that relishment that we get from hearing about Krishna. So this is actually real life. When we're hearing and chanting about Krishna, that's real life. And so I just wanted to end because obviously it's Radhashtami this Saturday. So we're talking about how all the devotees are relishing hearing about Krishna. But what about Srimati Radharani, the topmost devotee? Well, I mean, we know she's far more than just a devotee, but sometimes she's known as the topmost devotee. So I just put here that Srimati Radharani, who we know is the queen of all devotees, she is most pleased when she hears the names of Krishna being sung or chanted. So it's a very beautiful bhajan by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Mahabhav Chintamani. And one line, he says, Krishna Nama Yashaha Karno Lasa, which means the name and glories of Krishna are the delight of her ears. So this is the only thing that Srimati Radharani wants to hear, is the name and glories of Krishna. Everything else mundane, she has no interest in that. So because it's Radhashtami, I thought I would mention this, that this is we don't have to do much basically to please Srimati Radharani. So when Radhashtami comes around, don't think you have to do 100 different things to please Srimati Radharani. All you have to do is chant the name of Krishna, talk about the glories of Krishna, maybe talk about his pastimes, something. Just glorify Krishna and she'll be pleased. That's all you need to do. And as we hear so many times, once you please Srimati Radharani, then she will recommend us to Krishna and Krishna will be automatically pleased. And sometimes Srila Prabhupada explains in such a beautiful way that she'll even say, she'll recommend us to Krishna and she'll say, look at this, look at the wonderful service of this devotee. Actually, their service is even better than mine. No one can serve Krishna better than Srimati Radharani. Yet, out of her incredible humility, she's saying, oh, this devotee, this little devotee, in Eldoret, or this devotee in London, or this devotee in Watford, they're doing some little service, but actually this service is greater than my service. So this is the incredible nature of Srimati Radharani. I'm sure we'll all hear in our respective temples. I'm sure we'll hear much more about this on the 23rd. I just had one last thing I wanted to add, and then we'll stop. And if anyone has any questions, we can go through that. Sorry, 1 second. Just have to go back. So just this point, I forgot one thing very sweet which I wanted to add about this point about the Lord, not being able to, never being able to separate himself from the devotees. So basically, I heard a very nice lecture on YouTube from His Grace Amarendra Prabhu, who is definitely one of my favorite speakers of all time. I'm sure many of you have heard him. He describes things very sweetly, so much devotion. But anyway, he was talking about this point that, the Lord never takes a step out of Vrindavan. The Lord never leaves Vrindavan. And how could he? Because of the love that he's being shown by his devotees. And then Amarendra Prabhu specifically singles out Mother Yashoda, that, the incredible love of Mother Yashoda. And then he makes this point that Krishna couldn't speak the Bhagavad Gita in Vrindavan because at this point, this part of the lecture is very funny. He's making a lot of jokes, and he's talking in a way that no one in Vrindavan, no one takes Krishna seriously because he's just a little boy. He's their son or their friend or someone like that. But yeah, no one takes Krishna no one takes me seriously, So if I try to speak the Bhagavad Gita in Vrindavan, and Amarendra Prabhu was describing this so nicely, that imagine Krishna is saying to the Rajavasis, Sarva Dharman Parityaja, and then Amarendra Prabhu is speaking like from the point of view of Nanda Maharaj. He's saying, just go, Krishna, go and have a laddu, go and eat. It's like whatever, Krishna. Now go and have your dinner. So no one takes Krishna seriously. So he said that Krishna had to leave Vrindavan, even though in one sense he can't leave Vrindavan, but he had to leave Vrindavan to speak the Bhagavad Gita. And then Amarendra Prabhu, then it gets very serious all of a sudden, and he becomes very emotional, because then he's making this point that Krishna left his devotees who love him so much. He left these devotees in Vrindavan, and especially Krishna left Mother Yashoda to speak the Bhagavad Gita to us. So, it's such a powerful point that Krishna cannot leave Vrindavan. He's so much bound by the love of his devotees, but even then, he still left, at least externally, he still left just for us. Like, he gave up, all those loving relationships out of compassion for us. It's such an incredible point. And when we hear this, we can't help but feel, become overwhelmed, with gratitude to Krishna for this. So, yeah, so I know we went back a few slides, but I just wanted to add that point. And I think that is it. Yeah, okay. So, sorry. Okay, thank you so much, everyone, for listening patiently. And yeah, if you have any questions or corrections or anything you'd like to add, then please go ahead. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you so much for this class, and you gave us examples from various scriptures, Chaitanya Charitamrita and Bhagavatam, also Brihad Bhagavatam. And then the icing on the cake was what Radharani says, and I didn't know that. I always thought Radharani is very strict, and if you do anything wrong with Krishna, she will really be she'll chastise you, and you can't go to Krishna without her mercy. But today you portrayed her in a beautiful way, that she even glorifies devotees and says his or her devotion is better than mine, which is not true, but that's so beautiful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so of course, yeah, if we want to be directly engaged in Krishna's service, as a confidential servant of Krishna, then yes, obviously the standards are very high. It's actually explained by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. I saw this in his Harmonist magazine. He explains that ultimately Srimati Radharani is the guru of all devotees, but so she is like the guru of the confidential inner circle of Krishna's devotees. But before that, we have to obviously please Lord Nityananda. And if we please Lord Nityananda, he then recommends us to Srimati Radharani, and then we can possibly, be engaged in Krishna's direct confidential service. But otherwise, at least for us here in the material world, we're performing some service which is obviously not on that same level as these pure devotees, but we're trying our best, despite our conditionings. And Krishna, very kindly, he is accepting our service ultimately through the spiritual master, isn't it? Through the devotees. Here in the material world, we're not directly serving Krishna. Even if we're serving the deity, even if we're performing deity worship, we are offering it to our, through our spiritual master. The spiritual master is the one who's actually offering it to Krishna if we're doing deity worship, for example. But yeah, we are not able to. How can we directly serve Krishna in this materially conditioned state? But out of his mercy, he's giving us these means through which we can serve him indirectly. So yeah, thank you, Mataji.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions or comments? And of course, Amaranda Prabhu's point of view that Krishna had to leave. I mean, he didn't leave Vrindavan, but he left all that love. I mean, imagine if we had to leave our family to go and do a service somewhere else. We would think so many times. And Krishna just left all that love just for us. So his sacrifices are huge, huge, huge.
Yeah.
I really love that point, Prabhuji. And I heard somewhere, Prabhuji, when the gopis did devotional service and Krishna said that, what can I pay you? How can I pay you for your devotional service? And then he said, I'm paying you with devotional service. So more devotional service, because devotional service is the greatest. So that is what we should be aspiring to. Thank you, Prabhuji, for making that point. Thank you so much. Are there any other questions or comments? If there are no more questions or comments, Prahlad Prabhu, are you able to end the session today? Hare Krishna.
Yes, I am able to.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay, first I would like to start off by thanking His Grace Nikhil Gohil Prabhu for giving us this wonderful class on devotional service and how to go about it. Thank you so much, Prabhu. I understand I joined a bit late, I think so 20 minutes or 30 minutes late, but it was still wonderful to hear the points that you had given, Prabhu. Thank you so much. I would also like to thank the devotees for joining into this Zoom program. So thank you all for taking some time out of your busy schedules and coming here to listen to His Grace Nikhil Gohil Prabhu. So thank you so much as well. Hare Krishna. So on behalf of ISKCON Eldoret Prabhu, we would like to thank you. So I'd like to humbly request all the devotees assembled to please unmute yourselves and let's chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra once for His Grace Nikhil Gohil Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Krishna, Hare Krishna,
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 Hare Hare,
Hare
Rama,
Hare
Hare Rama,
Rama.
Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
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 Nikhil Gohil Prabhu ki.
Jai.
Gaur Premanande.
Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, everyone. Very much.
Pancha kalpatarubhyasya kripa sindhuvaivacha pranam.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Thank you for the wonderful class. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.